Well, welcome everybody and good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning on this special Travelzoo webcast. We know it's an incredibly difficult and busy time for everybody in the travel sector, and so I appreciate your time this morning. But we think it's going to be very interesting and useful as Travelzoo goes through some of the findings from its latest consumer barometer survey. James from Travelzoo will go through that in a minute. I just want to introduce myself briefly and tell you how we're going to run things this morning. So my name is Lee Hayhurst. I am Executive Editor of Travelzoo, part of the Travel Weekly group in the UK. James kindly allowed me to sort of moderate and introduce him this morning. We'll be doing a Q&A after James has gone through a number of slides showing you some interesting insight into consumer sentiment around travel. So please, as you're listening to James, if you can input your questions on the Q&A, I can then look at those and hopefully get through as many as we can in the time we've got. We aim to finish latest, and so get on with your busy day. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over now to James Clarke, who's the General Manager of Travelzoo UK, and he's going to take you through some of the slides. Over to you, James.
Thank you, and good morning, Lee. Thanks for being part of the Travelzoo member sentiment webinar, and good morning to everyone who's joined this morning's webinar. I hope you're all keeping safe and well during this time. This morning's session came about for a number of reasons. We've hosted events of this nature in the past, usually in person, our office with views spanning across London. However, not this time. Right now, we're faced with a truly unprecedented set of events, a set of events that are the result of the global pandemic, COVID-19. As you've all witnessed, the repercussions from COVID-19 have been unrelenting. In effect, the travel and leisure industry has particularly been affected by all of the rollout and waves from COVID-19. And as planes were grounded, ships docked, hotels closed, the travel industry has ultimately come to a stop. Or has it? Or are we just taking a deep breath? Are customers still pent up and ready to start booking and traveling? And at Travelzoo, we acknowledged the market and the ever-changing environment. We took the decision to pause our activity, including sending our beloved top 20 every week. We explained to our members why we were doing this, but reassured them that we'd bring it back, but only when the time was right, and most importantly, when they wanted to see travel content again. Therefore, I'm pleased to say I will now share the survey data that prompted the decision to return our top 20. I will share those green shoots that we firmly believe are the initial signs that the market is ready and waiting to book travel again. Although, from this data, I'm sure you'll see there are some broader changes to the sentiments of our members. So why don't we take a look and we'll go through the slides. So I'd like to start off by advising everyone that our surveys commence between the periods of the 22nd of April and the 29th of April. These are weekly reoccurring surveys, so we're collecting data now on a weekly basis, but I will reference the results from both of those sets of surveys. So that's pre some of the recent announcements, but it doesn't consider what's some of the latest data that I'll also give you a quick snapshot from at the back end of the presentation. So as I alluded to, one of the first questions we needed answering was whether our audience was interested in receiving travel content and how likely they were to book that travel content. And the results even took me by surprise. Both questions show upwards trends week on week, which is also encouraging. What you can see here is the large amount that 91% of our audience are interested in receiving travel deals, and that has only gone on to increase, while 74% of our audience are likely to book travel right now. Also interesting is the area around flexibility and the refundable nature of an offer, how members are looking for greater protection at this time of uncertainty. And at Travelzoo, we've seen early success stories with our own refundable deal content, which I'll come on to later. Next, we take a look at the UK break, and moving on to the UK break, what is noticeable from the data that we'll share is the strong sentiments towards the UK break and staycation. Looking at when our members would like to book a UK break, 58% of those surveyed said they would consider booking a UK break in the next 3 months, with 95% saying that they would definitely book one pretty much before the end of the year. September is the most popular travel month. Maybe is it the final hurrah for sunshine in the UK? Is that maybe why that's the most popular? Or is it maybe it's the belief that that will be the safest time to travel, because so much in the press has been around the latter part of the year being the time to the travel will start to resume again. However, 29% of the audience combined see July and August as the earliest that they would go away. And as we developed our survey, we started to narrow the field of questioning to really find out more so where people would like to go on their next UK break. And I should state that this was a free text field, hence the variety, but it is clear when we have a look at the results of where people would like to travel to. So Cornwall comes out extremely strong in this. You can see other areas such as Scotland, Devon, Lake District, the Channel Islands, Wales is up there, and these are really interesting destinations. There's obviously a small amount of crossover because it was a free text box into some of the regions, but you can certainly see a growing trend between coastal getaways and also the more rural break. The lack of cities does stand out, and I'm pleased to say that whilst the cities don't score as high as they have in the past, they still score. And I'm pleased that a recent promotion with GLH Hotels, we've successfully driven over 1,200 room nights in London sales in just under 48 hours this week, whilst a separate promotion for the 5-star Royal Horse Guards Hotel in London, we achieved just shy of 1,000 room nights since we launched that promotion last week. So these are just two great examples of where Travelzoo are working with partners to deliver these volume sales to these areas that maybe are not necessarily front of mind in the consumer as they think about where they'd like to go next. But it also does substantiate the data quite well that whilst these areas are very popular, the deal element to it can still motivate a member in making a purchase. So that's really, really quite interesting from the data. Now we need to look at travel. So we asked similar questions to our members who answered the survey around travel. The first question, which is I think we should look at first, which is when would be the earliest and say the most comfortable time making a booking and paying for a holiday. Now this changed, as you can see, between week 20, the survey from the 23rd to the 29th, but the interesting piece that really stands out is most people are thinking about making that reservation between really June, July onwards. September does show a spike, but there is still also quite a considerable amount of people who are thinking already about 2021. The majority, thankfully, are within this year, which again shows confidence that people are still feeling pent up and wanting to book travel. The next question, which was when's the earliest members would consider going on holiday? Sorry for that, thank you. The earliest our members would consider departing on holiday. Now, this is key. Linked to the UK, September has an extremely strong number of people suggesting that that would be their period. Again, is that kind of last hurrah of sunshine? Most people know in September you can travel to destinations like Greece, like Italy, like Spain, and the sun and the weather is still strong. But again, there's a growing demand there for the 2021 period, and that's certainly maybe in the mindset of so many people, where people are thinking, next year is going to be the time I take my next break abroad. Now we ask the same question as we did for our UK members, which is what destinations are going to be those destinations that you travel to? And I think this is really quite incredible, because Greece, which has been so popular with our members over recent years, continues to be a prominent destination. More so, it's taken over Spain, and that's an interesting trend. Maybe there is some link there to the way that COVID has been represented in those countries and how they've managed them, but I don't want to make any assumptions there. But Greece is standing strong. I think from our perspective, something else that's very interesting is the fact that France, which has never been in our top 10 of destinations previously, it's always been quite low outside the top 10, is now probably sat third or fourth from a popularity point of view. And now that's very interesting, especially as this comes pre the information around border control and the restrictions being loosened around France. So for us, this probably more resonates with the member thinking that isolation can happen still in a location like France, because you can drive to France, you can get a ferry, you can remain in your vehicle, and you can explore a territory that is actually very close to home. Similar to possibly why Scotland resonated so well from a UK break perspective. Other destinations that are notable on here, the US still is very popular. Canada has definitely gone down. That was our second highest destination in our previous survey of where our members wanted to go to this year. That has certainly reduced, but the US is up there. But you also see other countries, even Italy, where a destination that potentially has been plagued with poor press reports on the devastation that COVID has caused in that country, still resonates very, very popular with the UK audience. And what we do know is it also resonates very well with our US audience in a similar survey that was questioned. Now on to our next slide. We looked at cruise, and I think this was a really important question to ask, because at Travelzoo, a large majority of our audience are cruisers, they're active cruisers, and you can see already that one of the key questions we asked, which was the earliest you would go on to a cruise, 33% of those answered the survey would say 2021, which is quite a considerable amount. Who really, sorry, I'll rephrase that, sorry, 52% of the audience said they would, who answered the question said they want to go in 2021, which is quite a stark contrast compared to the holiday answer. Now, I think what's important is that the cruise market came through this COVID situation with quite a fierce, you could almost say, backlash. They were used on many of the front pages of newspapers. You know, there was a terrible reference to it, cruises being floating petri dishes. And I think actually cruise market will not only come out of this positively, but it also shows that I think a lot of the active and captive cruise market will disregard a lot of that commentary and probably still be active in the cruise market, but will take that break and look to book in 2021. We asked that same audience where they would like to cruise, and in particular what routes and what type of cruises they're interested in. And you can see that there's a very clear and distinctive winner, with Mediterranean cruises scoring extremely high. The Caribbean has come out very high, along with the Baltic region, Norwegian fjord cruises, and European river cruises. Now, I am also pleased to give a good example to some recent performance on that. Yesterday, we had a luxury high-end cruise that performed extremely well. We were told by our advertising partner that after 5 hours, nearly 100,000 in sales had already been generated for that deal, which I think is again a really clear sign that the cruise market is definitely not over. The market is still very captive, but I think the market will be led probably by two areas. One, this kind of inspirational cruise, maybe once in a lifetime experience, which still will be purchased. And I think the other end will be the kind of area that's highlighted here, which is around destination focus and the areas where people want to specifically see via a cruise. So med cruising being popular. Now on to the next slide. This was an interesting slide and some questions that we asked our audience at the very start of all of our surveys. And I think this was more to show relation to everybody else in the UK, to try to find out what everyone's been doing, and I know I'm the first to say I have been doing the family quiz nights. They're every Friday. We're doing FaceTime playtimes with my daughter and her friends, so I'm the first one to say I've done a lot of this. I've done the cooking and baking. I haven't had much time to read, but I have been planning future travel, I know that. So you can see on here when we asked them our members the same question: gardening stroke highly, watching TV and films, reading, connecting with friends and family online. So a lot of you should hopefully be able to resonate with some of these questions and answers as well. So that's quite an interesting view on what our members have been up to. And then the second question we asked our members when we started this survey was really what was really going to be interesting for them from a content perspective. What do they want to see from Travelzoo? Because as I highlighted at the beginning, what we didn't want to do was send content to our members at the wrong time, and we didn't want to force content towards our members. So there's a very clear line, and I think what was evident from the very early days of sending this survey was that our members were very keen, in fact, to see travel content, in particular content that had some form of refundable or flexibility around amending it. And I think this is a very key trend that will come out of this post-COVID area. There's been lots of conversation in previous webinars and in sessions that Travel Weekly have run around airlines and how they have restricted the refunds in the industry, and you can see that airfare deals alone with that are changeable without fee even strikes with our members. But the key here, I think, really is that the holiday packages that are fully refundable or have flexible booking conditions, and UK breaks that are fully refundable with dates up until the end of 2020 are the key areas what our members want to see. So we've been extremely proactive in driving that content and already seeing very successful returns. So as we came to the end of that survey, and whilst we've got they're just a snapshot of some of the questions that we were asking our members, we've continued to evolve our survey and the questions that we ask our members. So what we've done is we thought it would be interesting just to highlight some of the additional questions we've asked and show the findings. So the first section that we're going to go on to is the duration of trips. So again, very interesting. First, we asked the question about the UK break. Now, the predominantly the Travelzoo member books the 1 to 2 night UK break, and I think it's very clear to see a huge swing towards a greater duration, 3 to 4 nights, spiking at 44%, and 5 to 7 nights, almost just overtaking the 1 to 2 night. So for us, this gives us a insight, because we're able now to modify the way we produce our UK trips and breaks to our members, but it also allows us to work with UK partners, hotel groups, hotel chains, cottage companies, and hopefully work with them to deliver that content to our members in the forthcoming period. And the other question that we asked was around the UK, apart from UK, was the ex-UK holiday, so the holiday abroad, and what duration would be their most, should we say, their most targeted. And in previous times, the 7-night holiday has always been the most popular destination for our members, more so because we know that the generic Travelzoo member takes on average 4 holidays a year. They take short breaks, they take the 7-night, but what we can see from this set of results is already a much greater lean towards the 8 to 14 night holiday. Potentially this could be because if I can only squeeze 1 holiday in, the member is thinking I will take a longer holiday. It could also be linked to the possibility that they feel that they might not be able to afford multiple holidays and they'll get greater value from the 8 to 14 night holiday. There is also a very small spike in the 15 to 21 night holiday, which is also quite high, higher than the 3 to 4 night shorter break holiday abroad. So to me, this certainly says there's a huge appetite for members to see holidays of 7 and 14 night durations, if not longer. But it seems that the member is definitely not swayed to maybe a shorter break duration for the foreseeable until 2021. So it looks like potentially areas like city breaks or the shorter stay breaks may be affected in this downturn from COVID. The next slide, and probably the final slide that we'll go through in detail, was what types of trips. And I think this for us was an extremely interesting set of data that we've collected, predominantly because the sentiment around all-inclusive holidays has declined versus our previous surveys, so much so that all-inclusive has been knocked off the top spot for the first time. The return to bed and breakfast being the strongest sought after board basis for holidays and short breaks in the next 12 months. Self-catering has jumped to 35%, potentially with the push around people thinking around moving to cottages or villas or even being in self-catering apartments. But all-inclusive has definitely moved down, and coinciding with that is even ultra all-inclusive, which has also moved down. So whilst all-inclusive is popular and remains very popular with our members, as you can see, it has decreased versus our previous surveys. And I think when you consider that 39% would now consider a bed and breakfast holiday within the next 12 months, I don't think many people would have predicted that pre-COVID. So a very interesting piece of data there to share, and we'll continue to learn through this as we continue rolling out our surveys on a weekly basis. So for us now, in summary, from the data that we've shared, I think it's very clear that our members still love travel. The Travelzoo member loves to seek content and travel content from us, which is great because we love providing our members with the exciting content. And this content does vary. It varies from the very best flight deals, where we showcase our members flight only deals around the world, to showcasing them the very best local content, e-commerce and non-travel related products. We really try to show our members as much as possible. Travel demand is certainly out there, but there is now a much greater swing for 2021. There is appetite for cruise, and I don't think our findings has proven anything different to that. Flexibility around booking and terms and conditions is now definitely key, and it will more likely become even a USP as we move into this kind of post-COVID world. I think a lot of members have probably experienced difficulties in either getting refunds, understanding where they stand with operators. We've tried to work with many of them in that case, and I think moving forward, flexibility in particular around amending holidays or changing holidays is certainly going to be key. UK hotels and staycations boom is likely. I think looking at that data, if we translate what's been shown to us, the staycation in particularly in the short term is there. We've seen from our results that UK hotels are being booked far greater than anything else really on our site. We are working with hotel groups across the country, and I'm excited to say that from recent performances with working with partners like GLH Hotels, we've got more hotel promotions lined up, but we are always looking to work with partners. We are always looking to fulfill the need of our members by delivering them this exciting UK content. Cruise certainly has a bright future. I'm really excited to hear the results from one of our partners yesterday. I'm excited to read that not only they've seen results, but we've got other cruise partners who have been saying sales have been coming in as they focus on particular 2021. I think the types of cruises are going to be key, and I'd like to see our survey evolve over time and try to find out a little bit more about what our members would like from their cruises, and particularly about price points. But as we saw in yesterday's high price point deal, it clearly didn't put off our members from booking an expensive cruise. So that's exciting news for the cruise market. And I think finally, and I touched on this just now, which was, is it potentially end of the all-inclusive reign? Will we see a demise for a short while of all-inclusive's popularity, or will hotels and businesses change the way that the all-inclusive model works? Will they change the layout of restaurants? We know the likes of TUI have changed the buffet services already and have said this is going to change in their platform moving forward. Are other hotels going to do the same? We've spoken to some hotels who've already said that bed and breakfast will be served in the room, and they will change the restaurant completely and look to serve their daily breakfast as a room service option as they launch their hotels. So I think there's lots for us to still learn, but the initial feedback from our members is that all-inclusive is fading in popularity as our members look to turn to bed and breakfast and self-catering options. So hopefully this has been insightful for everyone. I would like us to run this hopefully again, maybe in the next month, and show how these trends have changed, and that will hopefully help all of our partners. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for going through that, James. Very interesting. I hope the audience took a lot out of that. I was just reflecting earlier on. It seems like an absolute lifetime ago, although it was only January when we were in the Gherkin with you guys.
Yes.
For your last live event, one of the few last ones I think the industry was able to attend, and we were looking forward to 2020, and actually hugely positive in many respects. I don't think we mentioned COVID at all, although obviously it was knocking about. It was in the press, but I don't think we actually touched on it.
No, we didn't.
So just give us a few reflections on how you feel, how things have changed in that period, and I think, as Amadeus said this week, great start to 2020 has just been completely wiped out. How do you looking back now, how do you feel we?
Yes, I think from my perspective and from Travelzoo's perspective, we were so optimistic about 2020. We haven't used this word for a while, but Brexit was at the forefront of our minds and our conversations. It wasn't a global pandemic, and we had just exited a fairly lengthy political situation. We had just seen Boris Johnson announced as a new prime minister. We had just secured that at the end of January we would come out of Brexit, and that it would go through Parliament. And we were suddenly, as a travel industry, looking at which destinations were going to be the boom destinations. I stood up at the Gherkin and told everyone about adventure cruising, about escapism, spa, cultural retreats, all these exciting trends. And you're right, this period of time has completely washed all of those kind of dreams away, and we're now faced with what does post-COVID travel look like. And unfortunately, a lot of the momentum that was growing for some of those trends, I think, actually has really set back some of the work that was being done, probably more so around what type of holidays people were looking for, because now holidays will likely be reduced, the number of holidays, so there won't be the opportunity for an individual to say, oh, I'm going to take one cultural city break this year, I'm going to take a spa break, I'm going to go one with the family and one with the friends. I think it potentially could be, I have one holiday this year, where am I going to go, and I need to make the most of it. So so I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest trends that comes out of this as travel is reduced. And I think the other area that we looked at in that session in January was how people will spend their time abroad, and we looked at the kind of the trends there. And again, I think that will change. I think the next holiday most people will take, they'll be quite happy to be on the beach enjoying a cold beer, rather than potentially charging around maybe a city. I think a lot of people will think about social distancing when they choose their next holiday. So probably why destinations already, like as we highlighted, like France being so popular, because maybe people are thinking, hey, I know I can get a cottage in the south of France, and I can have a holiday, and I can also respect the kind of social distancing that's in place.
Yeah, You can also travel to France in your own bubble, in your own car as well. So that maybe that reflects that. But we'll talk a bit more about those destinations in a minute, because a couple of the questions reflect that on the Q&A. But just to go into now where we are sort of today, having talked about what we thought things were going to be like in January. Obviously, this week there's been a number of things said about this summer, some off-the-cuff comments from politicians which have a massive impact. We've also had the news of quarantine plans and so on, which means this summer is going to be extraordinarily difficult. Although, having said that, the likes of Ryanair keep saying they're going to continue or get planes back in the air in July and BA and so on. We yet to see. I think we're learning conditionality is the key thing here. We just don't know. There's a lot of unknowns going on. So you're going to continue with this survey, as you said, week on week. What do you think this week's news will the impact that will have on next week's findings? Change.
So you've picked up on a really valid point, and that is particular that we have a message coming from a government body or a government spokesperson, and we also have the news and the output from an airline, one of the Europeans' largest low-cost airlines, saying I'm going ahead regardless. And I used the example when I saw what Ryanair said was maybe it's a race, the first one to the finishing line wins, and potentially Ryanair are maybe thinking if I turn up for the race and I just start it, I'll win and I will create the momentum that's there. He's also been quite clear, Michael O'Leary, by saying I'm not going to reduce seats in my aircraft. I'm going to run a fully stocked aircraft because that's how Ryanair remains profitable. The question is, will Joe Public decide that's what they want to do? Are they going to push travel at the forefront of their mind over the rules that we're being told about restrictions and the social distancing element? I think from the data perspective, I imagine our members are going to probably be more swayed to the political stance rather than what Michael O'Leary says. I think the newspapers will, as we saw in the past, I think the good example was when the Times published that article about Brexit and about how the effect that had on everybody booking holidays. I think this will be the same case, that we'll see a swing for people pushing for 2021 or for more weighted for the winter months. I think UK will see further growth as we know that some of the announcements this week has shown to say that potentially from the beginning of July, hotels will be allowed to open up, hospitality venues will be able to open up. So I think we'll probably see the balance where travel will go down for the summer months and push to the winter months, but then UK will push up for the summer months. So I think there'll be a blend there.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you suggested, this uncertainty is leading people to look for flexible deals and some peace of mind. I think we've done plenty of these webcasts on Travel Weekly, and people are constantly talking about rebuilding trust in the sector, in travel just generally, but also in brands, because there's been a difficult period, particularly with the refunds issue. How does Travelzoo play its role in that? I mean, you have your editorial people out there who are your deal finders. They'll have had a certain set of factors they look at up until now. Will you now change that so that you're out there looking for those flexible deals, trying to encourage that? What role can you play?
Yeah, so it's, again, a very valid point, and I think there's two answers to that. The first of what we are doing internally for our own product. So for our own product, we are now targeting fully refundable vouchers as our way that we speak to our members, which allows our members to book a getaway, a stay in the UK, where if they book the voucher through us and at any point want to not redeem it, they change their mind, or something happens in the news which says UK is not going to be opening up, they can get an instant refund through the Travelzoo platform, and it's very painless for them to do that. And we've seen a huge uptake in our voucher sales as members look for peace of mind and probably more protection with their money. So that's one thing that we've done, and we're working with all of our hotel partners who even can't work with us on a voucher basis, that we still try to generate this refundable and flexible element, and we signpost that throughout to our members. So every offer that we have on our site. It's tagged with fully refundable vouchers, and we're very clear to the member why we have put this content in front of them and what's the flexibility around it. Then for our travel partners, what we've done is we've spoke to all of them and said that moving forward, we need to signpost to our members very, very clearly what the terms are around the holiday. We need to be very clear that, is it a low deposit that's paid off by instalments? Is it a free cancelable holiday? Is it something that can be amended for free? So now not only have we signposted every single deal on the top 20, but as a member clicks on one of the deals, we've got at the headline at the top of the page in a green box the information about that deal and what that deal offers in the form of flexibility. And I'm actually very pleased to say that we are already working with partners. In particular, there's one travel partner that we're working with in the case of Exotica, who are offering fully refundable holidays already. So a customer can cancel a holiday until a certain point and completely have their money back. And we've already seen a very popular uptake in their holidays, and I know they've seen a huge success in sales because of offering their members and our members this form of flexibility.
Yeah. So something else people are saying is going to be key to increasing people's confidence is to offer them the information about health and safety, about what they're doing to ensure social distancing and making sure that the virus is under control in any environment. So as people are booking and dreaming and researching, they're going to be looking for that information. How does Travelzoo react to that? Is that something you're going to be wanting to surface early on in the process?
Yeah, it's a good question, because we are a publisher and we're also an advertiser for our UK content. So from our perspective, where we're a publisher, we have to work with our travel partners as best as possible to ensure that they look after our members, that they explain to our members around what it means for social distancing that holiday. We've spoke to some of our partners who run coach tours, who run cruises, who are very already, shall I say, probably at the forefront of making these decisions, and have said coaches will be spread out, this will happen. So they're probably more at the forefront. I think from a lot of the UK hotels that we work with and the deals that we publish, what's the most interesting and probably valid point is what I've already discussed, which is how breakfast rooms will look and how they will create larger spaces for people to dine in. Some hotels are going to have to close off small bar areas. There's a hotel that we're working with in London that we're soon to promote, who has a VIP bar area, and where before they could host 30 to 40 people in this VIP area, and we would sell this as an upsell. Based on new social distancing rules, a room that could hold 30 to 40 can now hold 6. Right. So suddenly that room becomes inefficient for them to use as a VIP area. So that doesn't become an option anymore. So we're working with our partners all the time in trying to find solutions for them and for our members, but also to abide by the rules that's being set out by the government.
Okay. Excuse me. So look, we'll go to some of the questions on the Q&A. There are a few technical questions about the survey, which I think is worth addressing. One is someone who's very eagle-eyed, but also anonymous, has spotted the numbers of people who filled in the survey. It was in small print at the bottom of each slide. Mm-hmm. And they said that something was around 1,700, wasn't it, for the last one? And then
yes,
lower for the previous one, which actually reflects increased engagement in your survey. And they ask whether there's any way you are able to widen the catchment of that database. I think you've been sending it out to a portion of the database. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. So we only send out our survey to 10,000 people each week. And we do not want to send it to a larger part of the audience, partially because we have a large UK audience of over 4.8 million people. We do not want to create a large amount of unsubscribes or disengagement to our members if they keep being bothered with a weekly survey. So if we send it out to a roll-in section of the audience, it allows us to run the survey for a much larger period of time, but also to build up member sentiment. So that's why why out of 10,000, that survey was answered by 1,700 people. And the most recent survey, really, we shouldn't have been sharing that data because it's still being answered by our members. But I was keen to highlight the results from that survey because it was quite interesting how far all-inclusive had swung and also what durations our members were looking for to holiday.
Okay, so there's also a couple of questions about how the degree to which your audience is reflective of the UK audience in general. So one question asks about the age profile of the audience. Now, I think we've spoken before, you do skew towards the older age group generally,
yes,
but they're the ones who maybe travel more as well. So just give us an idea of what your age profile tends to be.
So the Travelzoo audience is I would say is weighted more for the 50+ audience. We're generally it's just biased slightly to the female, so it's about 52% female. It's cash rich, time rich, so empty nesters is a large proportion of our audience, which is what we'd say is the perfect target audience for travellers. They take on average 4 holidays a year. We know that they travel to the UK as well, so these are active and captive audiences for booking travel.
Okay, and I'm going to go to a question now from Danny Crow from Just Go Holidays, and it relates to your demographic and one of the results you showed on destination preference. So he quite rightly points out that actually for the UK generally, France is extremely popular.
Yes,
usually tops the charts because all the people going off by car to France, etc. But it doesn't. You said it hadn't traditionally topped the charts or been in the top 10 in your survey. So he wonders how reflective your audience is of the general UK audience, and whether, you know, obviously now France is coming up your charts, maybe you're becoming more reflective. But what does that say about the audience you've got that France hasn't featured?
I think there is one of the. It's a very good question, so thank you. One of the areas that we should consider is that our audience, when we ask these questions, I couldn't not say that they're slightly institutionalized to the product they see on a weekly basis and a monthly basis. And the Travelzoo Top 20 features a lot of product for Greece, Spain, Italy, Croatia, the US. So I'm sure if they've had a good experience with Greece in the past, that they would no doubtedly think, hey, I want to go back and book Greece again, and I know I'm going to book it through Travelzoo. So I'm sure there is some form of natural bias to some of these destinations because they see that product and they've experienced that product through Travelzoo in the past. But when it comes to France, we've always asked this question of our members. So they've always been able to answer that in the past. And I think this gives a huge opportunity to any of our advertisers to say, we know it's up there in the top 2 or 3 destinations of what our members want to see. And at the moment, no one is providing us the content to fulfill that. So it's a great opportunity. And, you know, the other way of looking at it, as we said, is it maybe an ideal destination to travel to now because you can travel it in your own kind of bubble because you can be in a car. We know that the Channel Tunnel and the ferry operators will continue to operate, and we also have heard recently, only this week, that the UK and France have got into some form of agreement that there's going to be no restrictions put in place, which you know, maybe that's a huge boom for both markets because it's reciprocal. It also means the French should be coming to the UK.
Yeah. So I mean, that's interesting about the destination mix. And I think as you went through that slide, you were trying to make some sense of where's up and where's down, based maybe on how they've dealt with COVID. But then again, Italy's very high and Spain's still strong, as you'd expect. Somebody asks on the Q&A, you know, surprising to see the US still so high because the news coming out of the US has been particularly poor. I don't know whether we can make any sense of this from a COVID point of view, or whether it's impossible to know really how the impact is what the impact is going to be. What's your sense?
Again, a good question, and one that I would initially link to some of the data from our first top 20 went last week. We ran our second one this week, and last week we included a flight only offer to New York. That actually we had 3 flight only deals in our top 20, and it was the highest clicked and viewed offer. It was a Norwegian airfare deal to New York for sub £230, I believe, and that actually was the highest clicked flight deal, which again agrees with our member sentiment that clearly the US is still very popular. It has a huge amount of popularity with also that audience of that kind of 50 plus. We forget that the US is also a country that you can do a huge amount of different tourist activities. You can go to cities, you can go to beach, you can go into a city and end up at the beach. You can do all of these types of holidays in the US. So I think it's always resonated well with our member. And what's interesting is how, as you said, the press around the US and the way that it's been handled, or the COVID situation has been handled, hasn't been popular. But then you could also say that's the same with Italy. Italy has had quite a bad time in the newspapers and still resonates as a strong destination. So I think members and Joe public as a whole, because I do this as well, I would travel back to the US. I would go to the US. Always enjoyed my holidays in the US. So I think a lot of people look past necessarily some of the front pages of the newspaper, and they look at the destination and the content that that destination has to offer. And I also believe that a lot of the people who consider a country, USA is a big country to put as a resort. They're not necessarily saying New York, they're not necessarily saying Boston or some of the areas where COVID has had larger outbreaks. They're saying the USA in general, and that could mean Miami, it could mean San Francisco, it could mean Delaware.
Yeah, I think the difference between the US and Italy is you've got that political element going on with the US, which gets some people agitated, but I don't know how much it really affects people's decisions on whether they go to travel somewhere. And it's interesting, you've got New York on Norwegian being popular. I mean, New York's been badly hit. Norwegian's had some bad press. It kind of demonstrates, despite what you see in the press, people are still optimistic and resilient and think they can still go on these trips. So just hope that's the case. There's another question, James, from another anonymous contributor, asking about how people are going to change. So they talk about the fact that we haven't been able to do anything for 2 months, stuck indoors mainly, and whether you think this is going to change people's attitude towards looking for deals, savings, and the messages that you're going to put around that, and more towards this sort of flexible content. Do you think there's going to be a kind of, well, if it's too cheap, it might not be the right thing to do now because it doesn't offer me that flexibility or that assurance that it will happen, or that it is the right thing to do?
So I personally, I see us entering the most deal-laden market that we will see probably since 2007, 2008. There will be a large influx of product on the market with lots of captive buyers, which means you'll have two ways of approaching that. You'll have the deal market where people will go in and they will discount and they will offer more for less. And there will be the other side of the market, which if you have either you own the asset, or you've got exclusivity over the asset, or you have something that can't be recreated by someone else, then you'll be able to hold your price up. And I had this conversation with a trusted partner only recently where we said, if you can create those once in a lifetime moments, if you can add the Orient Express to a luxury cruise line, or you can add a tennis tournament to a 2-week holiday, those trips are the ones that members will always seek out as exclusive. They will be happy to part their money for those once in a lifetime experiences. We know that, for instance, Wimbledon, even the UK domestic Wimbledon experience that we sell, sells very well every single year because it's an event that can't get recreated any other time throughout the year, so it's always popular. Then you verse that, put that versus the the holiday and the type of product that can be recreated by everyone, that the low cost advertisers, the online travel agents can replicate, the airlines and their holiday divisions can recreate, and then the generic tour operator can recreate. And around that market, I see it being quite deal led, and it being very competitive. So on the other side of this, I think they're going to be the two types of market that exist for some time, as everybody fights for the captive consumer who's going to be actively looking to get away.
Yeah,
I think the flexibility piece, sorry to answer that piece, was I see that more as a USP. So customers may choose not to book a holiday that doesn't have that. But if there's two holidays that are exactly the same, one with James Clarke Travel, one with Lee Hayhurst Travel, and they're $199 each, but Lee Hayhurst Travel is saying whatever happens post-COVID, you get your money back if something happens, it's 100% guaranteed. Well, that's a USP now, because that member is likely to book with you rather than me because of that element.
Yeah. We did one of these on Travel Weekly this week, a webcast with some key people from the industry, and it was suggested there that, as you said, there'll be deals around as firms try and get back up and running again. Just stimulate the market, but they think longer term, the airlines are going to have to rein things in. They're going to incur huge costs. They're going to have to increase prices, and the feeling was that, going forward, we might have seen the end of the really cheap mass market travel sector. We wait and see. Maybe that's the case, maybe not. Do you concur with that? Do you think that we've gone through an era that we'll look back on and think, wow, that was quite a period of cheap travel, and we're very lucky to have it, but it didn't last?
I would agree I would agree with the sentiments that we have been spoilt in recent years with the cost of flying, the cost of hoteliers, but what would prevent me from agreeing to that sentiment in total is that the product has been built now. The aircraft are there, the hotels are there, they've been built, they're on the beaches. So there's going to be, I would imagine there's a growing trend to fill the hotels rather than to leave them dormant. It would be quite a scary thought to imagine in 12 months time a resort where 30% of the hotels are open and 70% aren't. I would imagine the sentiment would be, how do we fill these hotels? How can we be creative to fill these hotels? And then with airlines, whilst there's all the fleets are grounded at the moment, I imagine the emission from all of the airline operators will be to try to restore those to as high capacity as possible, as soon as possible. So maybe the market will look different. Maybe cost of holidays will go up as airlines and operators try to deliver an X amount of level of service. But I can't imagine that all of this infrastructure that has been developed globally will go to waste, and we will shrink the entire size of the travel industry to see a much smaller holiday market.
Yeah, and that's, your surveys looked at it from a demand side point of view, but in some respects, I think the recovery is going to be led on supply, isn't it? Where you can go to, where you can't go to, and
yes,
who's operating and who's not operating, and which routes are still operating. So that brings a very large, slice of lack of clarity, really, in what's going to happen going forward. And there's a question about the 14-day quarantine measures that were introduced or announced this week. Then we heard Spain would be introducing something similar. But to be honest, who's going to take a holiday in Spain knowing that they have to spend 14 days in quarantine and then come back and do 14 days here? So that's pretty much finished bookings for Spain, you would have thought, for this year, or as long as those quarantine measures are in place. Do you think?
Yes, for the foreseeable future, I think, unless something changes, Spain and the UK clearly have not entered into any form of agreement like what we've seen with France. What I can't comment on is the right decision for these markets. Potentially Spain could be saying, that's the right thing for us, and the UK could be making a mistake. I'm not going to comment on that. What I will say is that what markets are open, as we've said, will pent the demand. You look at areas like the Channel Islands or the Isle of Wight. If I pick the Isle of Wight as a good example, we ran a UK promotion there, and we've been selling the Isle of Wight like hotcakes. It's amazing, because I imagine a lot of our members are seeing it. Look, at least I get to travel. I'm going on a boat. I'm going to somewhere new, and I'm going to experience something that I haven't experienced before. And that is at the heart of travel. Remember, travel isn't necessarily always going abroad. It's about escapism. It's about seeing somewhere new, and it's about detoxing the mind from our everyday. And I think that's what's lovely about travel. It doesn't always have to be traveling on a 14-hour flight and going to the far side of the world where there's a deserted beach. We all want to do that, but there's also travel right on our doorsteps. And I think one of the nicest stories that's come out of this whole period of lockdown is the amount of positive I've heard from individuals who've said, I've been able to do things in the lockdown that I have neglected in the past, whether going for long walks, going on bike rides with the family, doing better exercise, reading, studying, all of these things. So I think there's a lot of self-reflection that will come out of this period as well, which may then change the way we travel going forward.
Do you think it's possible some destinations might emerge as a result of this? Because if you think about the countries that really appear to have handled the crisis best, you've got the Germanys, and maybe you might include Sweden, but you might include South Korea, you might include Taiwan, some far-flung places. Australia and New Zealand have clearly dealt with it fairly well as well. Do you think we might actually see an upsurge for those kind of places based on our perception?
Yes, I think that will. I think that will certainly be a trend. I think there will be countries quite clear to use that as a USP when they start their marketing campaigns, that they're COVID-free and that they've got excellent procedures in place. I can't help but feel for a destination like Australia. They went through such a torrid time last year with the fires, and then just when they thought the market was going to turn for them, they entered into this scenario. So I'm pleased that they've been able to handle it in the way that they have. New Zealand have done a remarkable job as well, so I'm pleased for both those markets, and I think they will definitely benefit from it. The other area that we have seen actually traffic and clicks recently surge towards is definitely been some of the UAE markets, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. Traffic has been very high for those searches and for some of the deals that we've been publishing. So I think those markets have also come out quite well from this scenario. And yeah, without a doubt, as I said, I think this will be used in some of their marketing in the future about some of the safety measures that they've got in place and how they will be received by the members by pushing that message out there.
Yeah, great. Okay, but I've got one eye on the clock, James, and it's nearly 10 o'clock, so we should close things off now. Just to let you give a final thought, I guess, on what prospects are. We're all looking for that green shoot, glimmer of hope, and we know it's going to be a long haul, but a few final thoughts from you, and then you can close it up. Thank you for everyone for attending, and I'll hand over to you, James, to close.
Yeah, so firstly, thank you, Lee. Thank you to everyone who's attended today. This will be recorded, and we'll also share the pack. If you wish to have the presentation deck, please contact us. The likes of the sales guys are around, so there's Adrian from Travel and Nick from Hotels, and Nikki, James and Claire from Local. So please feel free to reach out to our teams or myself directly if you wish to have any more information. What I'd like to do is say that I think what we've learned through this period of time and what we're continuing to learn is very much that travel is still at the forefront of our members' minds. Inspiration is key, and we are, as a business, determined to continue to drive that travel inspiration to our members and to highlight all the amazing travel deals out there in the market. They don't have to be £99 breaks to Benidorm, as so many people think, and they don't have to be £10,000 Arctic cruises. It really does vary what we display to our members, but it's the inspirational element that is so important and about why our members should see this content. Also, I think the green shoots that we clearly are showing is that people are wanting to book holidays, they are wanting to travel. There is that pent up already frustration around booking travel, and I think that will only continue as we live through this period of time. But I would like to add that we're very fortunate that we've hopefully the people involved and you know, the UK as a whole, we're living through a very unprecedented set of events that I hope we never have to live through again. And as long as we can all get through this safely and we can all be with our family again, hopefully it won't be too long until we're traveling again and enjoying the wonders that the world has to offer. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lee. And that's us.